before, so I know something's being done.
And make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 1-800-210-7170. It's 1-800-210-7170. Again, 1-800-210-7170.
Selling a home is expensive and stressful. So we set out to create a better home selling experience with a network of the most successful real estate agents in America. It'll sell your home for as little as a 2% commission.
The icing on the cake with the idea of agent was that we saved $12,000 in commission.
They were so stress-free. The whole process was amazing, and I would definitely recommend them.
We are not a discount broker. These are top local agents that'll get you the best results.
No, I'm an Shatner. And you may not know this about me, but years ago, I was diagnosed with a sleep disorder. And like millions of others, I was prescribed sleep equipment. Did you know sleep equipment manufacturers recommend daily cleaning? That's why I use SoClean. It's the perfect complement to my daily routine, and it's hassle-free.
Try SoClean risk-free for 30 nights and get a $70 instant rebate. Call 1-800-343-6781.
Today, the president continues to play to the most extreme factions of his political base, tweeting an attack against Bubba Wallace, the only black-sponsored driver in NASCAR. The president asking, quote, has Bubba Wallace apologized to all those great NASCAR drivers and officials who came to his aid, stood by his side, and were willing to sacrifice everything for him, only to find out that the whole thing was just another hoax? Well, it wasn't. Actually, Wallace and NASCAR have replied in full in the last days and weeks that the rope found in his garage was, unlike all the others, shaped like a noose. The only difference was it had been there for a while. It was not found by the FBI to be aimed specifically at Bubba Wallace. Tyler Raddick, another driver, tweeting today to the president, we don't need an apology. We did what was right, and we will do just fine without your support. The president clearly deciding this weekend, though, that an attack on critics of the Confederate monuments is a big appeal to his base during this holiday weekend speeches in Mount Rushmore and in Washington.
The radical ideology attacking our country advances under the banner of social justice. But in truth, it would demolish both justice and society. It would transform justice into an instrument of division and vengeance.
The fuck of fuck. That's what you scared of, vengeance.
End America. We will never allow an angry mob to tear down our statues, erase our history, indoctrinate our children, or trample on our freedoms.
And joining me now, NBC White House correspondent and Weekend Today co-host Peter Alexander, MSNBC political analyst Rick Tyler, PBS NewsHour White House correspondent Michelle Sindor, and Washington Post White House correspondent Ann Gear, and welcome all. What a way to celebrate the nation's birthday and bring the nation together. Peter, the attacks continuing today, the Bubba Wallace, why would he go after Bubba Wallace personally with that dig today?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Not just going after Bubba Wallace, but also perhaps as striking in that tweet was him being so supportive of the Confederate flag in his two addresses over the weekend that faced a lot of criticism. He tried to sort of uphold the American heritage, as he describes it, but steered clear of making any particular references to the Confederacy. He did that, though, in this tweet, and in speaking to one of the president's allies within the last hour, this individual described it to me as an unforced error, says it is a step backward, and it's the president basically pursuing a smaller and smaller slice of the pie right now. I was also struck by what Lindsey Graham said about this just moments ago, pushing back by the president's own allies, pushing back publicly to the president's statement. He said to Fox News Radio about NASCAR, they're trying to grow the sport. I've lived in South Carolina all my life, and if you're in business, the Confederate flag is not a good way to grow your business. As we've witnessed, though, this is the president not just doubling, tripling, quadrupling down at this point on these culture wars, again, stoking these tensions, these racial divisions within the country.
And Peter, you did great. We can hear you fine over the blower and the trucks and everything else on the North Lawn. Michelle Sindor, the president falling back on his denial in terms of the virus and focusing on dividing the country by going after protesters, emphasizing any violence in protesters. and really drilling down on support for the Confederate soldiers, saying that they were fighting for freedom, not fighting against racism.
That's right, Andrea. What we see in President Trump is someone who is determined to be on the side of Confederate generals, determined to be on the side of people who see American history, his critics would say, as white history. This idea that America treated everyone equally and that there was really no racial strife in America. That's the history that President Trump continues to harken back on. And what he's doing is really positing himself as an enemy to the Black Lives Matter movement, which of course has really swelled and has the support of Americans across all 50 states, including in red states. We saw people take to the streets saying African Americans should be treated equally, police brutality should stop. But what the president's doing is saying that that movement that is really something that is organic, that is everyday Americans asking for their country to do better, he does not want that movement to succeed. And what he's doing is taking this political risk, which is he's looking at these people who are against moving America forward and saying, no, we need to be on the left side of those people. I also think that this is really interesting, that all of this is happening as the New York Times had to sue the Trump administration, the CDC, in order to get racial data on the virus that shows that African Americans and Latinos are dying and being infected in the virus at higher rates than white Americans. I think all of this together is really showing that the president is really running from the idea that there is racial inequities in this country. And it's an interesting strategy on his part. It's a strategy that worked in 2016. It's a strategy that didn't work in 2018. And we'll have to see if it works in 2020.
Indeed, and Garen, you were traveling a lot with the president and focusing on this issue. I'm going to share with a lot of our viewers an excerpt from what your colleague Dan Balls wrote as well today. He wrote, Trump knows his re-election campaign is in trouble. He sees the fight against this enemy of his creation as his pathway to victory in November. His political weapon of choice is exaggerated and at times racist rhetoric designed to pit Americans against Americans. Never in our lifetimes has the Independence Day holiday been used for such divisive and personal ends. And you've watched it up close in your travels to Tulsa and other places.
Yeah, the president, India, is really betting hard here on something that some of his own advisors think is a bad idea, which is to focus on an extremely small slice of America, which overlaps with some of his most hardcore ardent supporters. The problem is that he drives away a large share of the electorate that he's going to need for his, at this point, quite troubled re-election campaign. And no one around the president who thinks that this is a bad strategy long term has been able to persuade him otherwise. I think what we saw this weekend and that Dan Balls identified so clearly is the historical difference that we see now. The nation's birthday has really been for 2 centuries, and certainly in the modern communications era for most of the last century, been an opportunity for presidents to speak to the country in unifying fashion and talk about the things that unite us and talk about the things that make America great and look forward to continuing that greatness and all the kinds of story rhetoric that it's really easy to summon on July 4th. And instead what we had this weekend in the speech at Mount Rushmore and then again at the July 4th speech was the president attempting to divide Americans one from another. Some of the rhetoric recalled his anti-immigrant rhetoric from the 2016 campaign. There he was focusing outward on an enemy. Here he is making the enemy other Americans.
It did have also overtones of the inauguration address and the carnage in America. Rick Tyler, I was talking to Asa Hutchinson on Meet the Press yesterday, and here is a Southern governor and asking about the wearing of masks and the example that the president is not setting as well. You're showing by example when you're out in public, and other Republicans now are. The president is not. He not only is not wearing a face covering in public, but he held these huge gatherings over the weekend. South Dakota, and again in Washington, D.C., against local objections in Washington. What example is that?
Well, in terms of the gatherings themselves, a lot of them were canceled here in Arkansas for the July celebrations, just trying to minimize that exposure. But when you look at a national level, I think it is good that we celebrate our independence. That's a controlled environment. It was outside at Mount Rushmore. I think it inspired many. Obviously, I would like to see more face coverings there as in order to set an example.
Governor, there was absolutely no social distancing in South Dakota. There were thousands of people there sitting absolutely crowded in and no face coverings as well.
There should have been face coverings. They should have followed guidelines there.
He went on to say that he would not like to have a rally in Arkansas, Rick, without some kind of face coverings or distancing.
You know, Andrew, I saw that your interview with AC yesterday, and it is just unbelievable to me that we can't just have a simple message that masks represent freedom. Masks represent freedom from infection, from illness, from not being able to breathe, from hospitalization, from the worry it might infect a loved one, especially your elderly grandparents. And it's just such a simple thing to do. I said on this program over a month ago that the coronavirus was going to hit the red states, it was going to hit them hard. That's now happening. I'd like to make another prediction, and I'm not being complacent. In the current trajectory, it's almost an impossibility that Trump would win an election unless it's close, where he could put the country into a constitutional crisis. But if you look at the daily new cases, 9 of 10 of those states are all states that Trump won. Florida's getting 10,000 plus cases a day. That has affected not only people's health, but the economy dramatically. Trump touted it was 5 million new jobs in the month of June. But let's put that in context. If we had a jobs report equal or better than the 5 million in June, in July, August, September, and October, we would still be 2 million jobs in the hole. That's the reality that people are facing. We're facing coronavirus and economic hardship. And this president would like to believe that this virus is somehow magically going to disappear. It's not going to magically disappear. He's going to magically disappear.
And just to pick up that point, Peter, you spoke to the President's Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, about that 99% harmless comment. Let's play that. I want to ask you about it.
That's the real key is when you start to take out some of the deaths we've had in nursing homes and those. It's not to downplay the deaths that we've had, but it's really to look statistically to know that whatever risk that you may have or I may have or my children or my grandchildren may have, let's look at that appropriately, and I think that's what he was trying to do.
You're a fucking moron.
Cases where people test positive are suddenly harmless. You would agree that if you don't die, it may not necessarily still not be harmless.
Well, listen, anytime anybody is sick, we look at that. I don't think it was the president's intent to downplay that as much as saying, let's look at the risks and let's look at this in an appropriate way.
Peter, the fact is the president, the White House strategy, as you've been reporting, is to downplay the threat of the virus.
Right now, the White House strategy, the messaging is that people have to learn to live with it, but the president wasn't speaking the truth when he said 99 of these cases are totally harmless. I'd be curious who the White House identifies as a member of the task force who would say that that fact is true. They haven't been able to prove any data. A lot of people may not die, but they certainly get sick and severely ill at times.
Peter, thank you so much, and Garen and Mish and Tyler, thank you all. And coming up, unanimous, today's Supreme Court ruling on a case that could have changed the way we pick our president. We're still waiting for an update from Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis. He spoke to speak about the COVID-19 outbreak in his state. We'll bring it to you when it happens. Stay with us. You're watching Andrew Rich Reports on MSNBC.
My new pizza is shakaroni, and it's bigger than pizza. Because for every shakaroni sold, $1 is donated to the Papa John Foundation to build a community.
Chances are you have a few home projects on your list. Whether it's something to fix them or fix up down the road, count on Home Advisor to find the best plumbers, electricians, handymen, and more to get the job done right. With the Home Advisor app, it's never been easier to schedule, check prices, and pay for your home projects in seconds. That fix you've been putting off, done. The project that will make your dream home even dreamier, mission accomplished. So get the Home Advisor app, and we'll do everything to fix your everything. Stress balls gummies with herbal natural guide. help turn the stress into your best life. Live like a stress baller with Stress Balls.
When we started Carvana, they told us that selling cars 100% online wouldn't work. But we went to work, building an experience that lets you shop over 17,000 cars from home, creating a coast-to-coast network to deliver your car as soon as tomorrow, recruiting an army of customer advocates to make your experience incredible, and putting you in control of the whole thing with powerful technology. That's why we've become the nation's fastest growing retailer, because our customers love it. See for yourself at Carvana.com.
In the first 3 months, we saved $4,100.
Car Shield saved me over $6,000 in engine repairs.
If your car is out of warranty, you need to call Car Shield before expensive breakdown. An engine, transmission, or computer system breakdown could cost you thousands of dollars, but not with Car Shield, America's #1 car protection provider.
Car Shield saved us $4,000.
They put a transmission in it, air mode. Who does that?
Car Shield makes sure you don't have to pay for expensive car repairs. Car Shield covers most makes and models from 5,000 to 150,000 miles.
We saved over $6,000 on a complete engine rebuild of our truck. It's like having a suit of armor around my car.
You'll also receive at no extra cost roadside assistance, towing services, and rental coverage.
If the car's out of warranty, believe me, you want to have caution.
Call now for a free and instant protection plan quote. Call 800-596-5856, 800-596-5856.
Time for new reading glasses? Go to readers.com. Choose from hundreds of styles and colors for under $20. And now, enter this exclusive TV coupon code at checkout to save up to 40%. That's readers.com. Use Ibotta every time you shop. You'll earn real cash back on every purchase at over 500,000 stores. Simply pick your offers and go shopping. Then take a picture of your receipt. Download now and get your $20 bonus just for trying the app.
Now, from a unanimous ruling by the Supreme Court today that could have an impact on the upcoming presidential election, the case had to do with so-called faithless electors, electoral college members who feel they don't have to follow the direction of the voters in their states. NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams joins us now. Pete, tell us about this case and the significance of the ruling.
Way, Andrea, because if the vote in the Electoral College was close and electors were truly free to vote for whoever they wanted, they could decide the outcome of the election. As it stands now, electors are chosen by their political parties. They pledge to support whoever wins the popular vote in their state, and that's the way it's supposed to work. So if the Democrat wins the vote in a certain state, then the Democratic slate of electors go to the Electoral College for that state in December and cast their votes accordingly. So the question was, can they go rogue? And the Supreme Court said today, no. Elena Kagan wrote this unanimous decision. She said it's true the Constitution is silent on this, but it does say that states appoint electors, and the power to appoint means the power to set conditions. So, Andrea, this is one of those cases where if it had gone the other way, it would have been hugely disruptive, and I think that's basically what the people who brought this case were hoping, ultimately, that it would get the more attention on the Electoral College and perhaps persuade people to move more to direct popular vote.
And Pete, do we know anything else about the rest of the term and when the final decisions are going to come in July? You know as well as I that doesn't usually happen.
So the anything else part, yes, we know what cases are left to be decided, but no, we don't know when we're going to get the final decisions. We're still waiting for the big ones on whether Congress and a New York prosecutor can get access through subpoenas to financial documents the president has, a couple of important freedom of religion cases, including the opt-out for the contraceptive mandate of Obamacare, but we don't know what the last day is. And, we're in the situation because of the pandemic. The Supreme Court basically called off oral argument for March and April, pushed it all into May, and that has, pushed the whole schedule behind it.
Pete Williams, we're happy to have you around. Thank you. Longer than usual in July. And coming up in the running, who is on the list to be Joe Biden's running mate? More on that coming up next. And why have Black and Latino people been hit so hard, the hardest, by the coronavirus? We'll dive into the data later. During this hour, this is Andrea with the reports on MSNBC.
This is Kate. She always wanted her smile to shine. And now she uses a capful of TheraBreath Healthy Smile Oral Rinse to give her the healthy, sparkly smile she always wanted. TheraBreath. It's a better mouthwash at Walmart, Target, and other fine stores.
If you have moderate to severe psoriasis or psoriatic arthritis, little things can become your big moment. That's why there's Otezla. Otezla is not an injection or a cream. It's a pill that treats differently. For psoriasis, 75% clearer skin is achievable with reduced redness, thickness, and scaliness of class. For psoriatic arthritis, Otezla is proven to reduce joint swelling, tenderness, and pain. And the Otezla prescribing information has no requirement for routine lab monitoring. Don't use if you're allergic to Otezla. It may cause severe diarrhea, nausea, or vomiting. Otezla is associated with an increased risk of depression. Tell your doctor if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts, or if these feelings develop. Some people taking Otezla reported weight loss. Your doctor should monitor your weight and may stop treatment. Upper respiratory tract infection and headache may occur. Tell your doctor about your medicines and if you're pregnant or planning to be. Otezla. Show more of you.
You have reached the 911 police emergency line. Due to defunding of the police department, we're sorry, but no one is here to take your call. If you're calling to report a rape, please press 1. To report a murder, press 2. To report a home invasion, press 3. For all other crimes, leave your name and number, and someone will get back to you. Our estimated wait time is currently 5 days. Goodbye.
I'm Donald J. Trump.
That's stupid. That's a dumbass message. If you approve that message, you're a fucking idiot. Just butter.
We're open and ready to help
Just
small
butter.
business any way we can. Everything for small business. And of course, shipping. TheUPSStore.com.
Life isn't a straight line, and sometimes you can find yourself heading in a new direction. But when you're with Fidelity, a partner who makes sure every step is clear, there's nothing to stop you from moving forward.
If you've ever considered getting a walk-in tub, we have great news! Introducing the all-new shower package. Now, for a limited time, when you purchase a Safe Step walk-in tub, we'll upgrade your order to include our newest and best feature yet, a free shower package. That's an $800 value free. With our new exclusive shower package, you can now conveniently shower in your new walk-in tub. The luxurious rainfall shower head is adjustable for your height all the way up to 7 feet. Now you can finally enjoy the best of both worlds with the therapeutic benefits of a warm, soothing bath that can help increase mobility, relieve pain, boost energy, and improve sleep. Or if you prefer, you can take a safe, refreshing shower all in one amazing product. Call today for your free shower package with your purchase of a new Safe Step walk-in tub.
Call 1-800-625-4964 for our free exclusive new shower package.
Joe Biden has long said he will pick a woman as a running mate, and since the death of George Floyd, there's a growing push for him to put a black woman on the ticket. One of the names on Biden's list is former National Security Advisor, Ambassador Susan Rice. I asked her about it on Sunday to Meet the Press. You are also, of course, being someone on the vice presidential list for Joe Biden. Obviously, you have the national security credentials, but how should Americans feel about voting for someone who's never had any experience in electoral politics, never run in a national campaign?
Well, Andrew, let's not get ahead of ourselves here, right? Joe Biden needs to make the decision as to who he thinks will be his best running mate, and I will do my utmost, drawing on my experience of years in government, years of making the bureaucracy work. I've worked on multiple campaigns, presidential campaigns. I've been on the campaign trail as a surrogate, and I'm going to do everything I can to help get Joe Biden elected and to help him succeed as president. Whether I'm his running mate or I'm a door knocker, I don't mind.
And joining me now is former Democratic Congresswoman Donna Edwards of Maryland and Jonathan Capehart, opinion writer for the Washington Post. Welcome both. Donna, it was very interesting that there was no shyness there in Susan Rice's answer. She put herself out there. She was very direct about it. Similarly, we've seen others responding that way. The Washington Post is reporting today that Senator Duckworth is actually emerging as a contender higher up on the list. And we've seen former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, who's been in direct contact with the Biden campaign, talking in an interview that there was a lot of attention lately on Duckworth. What are you seeing?
Look, I think the Democratic Party and Joe Biden in particular has an embarrassment of riches when it comes to this election for a vice president. I think the big issue that was on the table was whether it was going to be a woman. Well, he put that aside by saying that he would choose a woman. And there are any number of women, in my view, who have the requisite experience, pluses and minuses. And so I've actually decided not to get invested in who that woman should be, because I think the most important thing is for Joe Biden to choose somebody he can govern with, not just someone he can campaign with, but he can govern with a governing agenda that's really strong, and making sure that we put the country on a pathway that isn't just about recreating the past, but really building a future that's inclusive for all Americans. And I think he should choose someone who he can work with to get that job done.
And until now, the conventional wisdom has been that Kamala Harris fits the bill because she has run in a national campaign and has been in the debates. And that was one thing that Joe Biden said he was thinking about. Let's watch what she had to say to Nicole Wallace last week.
I want deep in my heart that Joe Biden wins this election. And I want Joe Biden to pick whoever is going to help him win the election. And wherever I am, I'm going to support him in every way I can.
Jonathan Capehart, Kamala Harris is high on a lot of people's lists, but not on your Aunt Gloria's list. And we always listen to Aunt Gloria. Tell me about what she wants.
Right. So my Aunt Gloria, from the very beginning, she said that Joe Biden is going to be the nominee. He needs to be the nominee. She's been proven right. There's Aunt Gloria. But then early on, she said that she thought that Senator Elizabeth Warren should be his running mate. When the Black Lives Matter protests flared up initially in late May, early June, I got an email from Aunt Gloria saying, in this time, we need to be brought together. I think Senator Harris should be that person. But it only lasted a couple of weeks, and she emailed me back saying, nope, sorry, going back to Senator Warren. She thinks that Senator Warren would be a good governing partner with Vice President Biden. I have to say, in my family, my mother, on the other hand, wants Susan Rice to be the vice presidential nominee. She likes
and
Susan
crackers
Rice.
will always be crackers.
I still stand by my original
Straight
going on the record to say that Senator Kamala Harris would be the best pick for Vice President Biden. But look, all of the names that I've mentioned and all of the names I agree with Congresswoman Edwards, that there's an embarrassment of riches here for former Vice President Joe Biden. Any of the people we've been talking about would be superb.
I just want to say, Jonathan, I haven't met Aunt Gloria, but I met your mother on Zoom last week on your birthday celebration. So I'm listening to everyone in your family and to Donna Edwards. So Joe Biden will pick the eventual choice, of course. We have to leave it there because Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida has, in the villages, by the way, where that white power protest was last week that the president retweeted, is now speaking. Let's listen.
Continue that effort, but that's very, very important. The mortality is very, very clear, skewing heavily in that direction. So those are folks that need support. We'll talk about the expansion of testing, which is very robust now, the social distancing, which is still very important, support for hospital healthcare workers, and then obviously, introduction of the virus into Florida. So if you look at where we are and kind of where we've been, particularly, over the last month, when we started this, clearly the testing levels were low at the time. CDC said only test somebody who's 65 and older, has symptoms. It was in China, maybe some other international places. Part of that was just there was a limited testing capacity. So you look kind of the March, beginning of April, we were testing at probably similar levels per capita that other states were, except for the Northeast. But but much different than what we are now. But the positivity rate was basically about 10% for those first 4 to 6 weeks. And so, if you did 10,000 tests, you get 1,000 positive is kind of what we were looking at there. Then as we got into April, we started seeing positive movement in the positivity rate. The beginning of May through that second week of June was really the best testing that we had going on in the state of Florida in terms of low positivity. We were expanding the number of tests being conducted, but the amount of people, the percentage of people testing positive was very, very low. So you look at the beginning of May, we were under 5% all the way through June 13th, we were 4.9%. Now the June 13th week, 7th to the 13th, you started to see, even though 4.9 is still good, we were 3.3% the week before, started to see a little increase in the positivity. Part of that was driven by discrete outbreaks that we were seeing in different parts of the state. But I think that was kind of the beginning of then the next week we get into, and again, we're testing a lot of people, 230,000, but we went to 9.5% positivity. And so you're testing a lot of people, but the percentage testing positive is higher. And then the following week, a huge increase in the number of tests that are done, but also an increase in the positivity from 9.5 to 11.9%. And then this past week, we did almost 400,000 tests, but had just under 15% positivity. And really, when you look at the positivity, it's been about 15% pretty consistently now for more than a week. I mean, really probably about 8 to 10 days. So, when you're looking at cases, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, for every case that's documented, there are many more infections that have actually occurred. We only diagnose a small fraction of the total number of infections. So if you are at 5% positivity and you test 50,000, and then you test 100,000, the positivity stays the same. Yeah, you'll have twice as many tests come back positive, but it's not really evidence that it's more prevalent. When you are seeing the positivity increase, more people out of whatever amount you're doing testing positive, that's an indication of the positivity increasing. And so some of these things we've seen over the last 8 days, and other people say, oh, this record case, it's basically been the same. I mean, yeah, when we do 85,000 tests, we're going to have more. We're doing 40,000 tests, we're going to have less positives. But the percentage has been pretty consistent. Now, we want to get back down to that 3-4% that we were in May and early June. At the same time, the 15%, that's a far cry from what you were seeing in places like the Northeast. They were 30, 40, 50% early in the pandemic. And in fact, we are now at the point where we've tested 10% of the state's population, so 2.2 million people. We got about, obviously, a little under 22 million Floridians, and so that's a lot of tests. But I think it's something that was significant. We wanted to expand testing, and we've done it. And then here's the stats for the last week. Almost 400,000 people tested, 14.8% tested positive. So again, if you take the May percentage, we would have probably been 4 or 5%. So that's going to generate a lot more tests, positive tests, when you're testing at 14.8%. And the positivity is not uniform throughout the state of Florida. You go down to Miami-Dade, they've been 20%. You look at Hillsborough, they've been between 15 and 20%. I think Orange County has been over 15%. And then there's other places that have been less. And, it may not be, some places were 1 or 2% in May. Now they may be 6 or 7. So you have seen an increase in the positivity, but there are a lot of parts of Florida that are still in the single digits. So obviously we want to keep it that way and then be able to do. And then the median age is really significant. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The median age of everybody testing right now positive for this past week is 36. And as we've seen the cases increase, the median age every single day has been in the 30s, sometimes as low as 33. Why is that important? Well, because this is a virus that does not affect all age groups equally. It's much more lethal for people who are in their 80s and 90s than it is in your 20s and 30s. And I'll go through some of the numbers, but basically, if you're under 40, you don't have significant comorbidities, you know, the fatality rate for this is pretty close to zero. So who is testing positive is just as important as how many people are testing positive. This is probably a 2-decade shift from where we were with the median age at the end of March, beginning of April. We had been in the 60s, then in the 50s, and then as this upswing has really been driven by a lot of people in their 20s and 30s testing positive. And so here's an example of kind of the risk profile by age group, which is very, very important.
And as we've been listening to the governor of Florida downplaying the numbers and saying that it's increased testing and that it's also a younger cohort. So joining us now, or rejoining me now, is NBC News medical correspondent Dr. John Torres and former Democratic Congresswoman Donna Edwards of Maryland and Jonathan Capehart, opinion writer with the Washington Post, back with us. Dr. Torres, first to you. He is basically saying a lot of what the president's been saying. It's increased testing and that the age category is lower, so therefore not to worry. But those young people do have families, have grandparents and parents, and see other people. So what are we to believe here?
So exactly, you're right. It is something to worry about because the numbers you counted, definitely there's more testing, which means the numbers are going